So help me God.
So help me God.
So help me
So help you God. So help me God.
So help me God.
Imagine stepping into a shady terrace at sunrise, looking out over rolling Piedmont hills, and finding the host of your breakfast already nibbling olives, critiquing violin sonatas, and measuring garden peas with a pocket ruler. That host was Thomas Jefferson, philosopher, inventor, dedicated food lover, and the only U.S. president who once calculated the exact angle at which sunlight hit his salad greens. By the end of this video, you will know what he cooked, where he lived, why his estate dazzled visitors even as it slid toward bankruptcy, and which bargain he struck that made the United States 828,000 square miles bigger overnight. Stay tuned, because the author of the Declaration of Independence lived a life stuffed with more flavor than even his famous macaroni pie. Fun fact to get your attention early: Jefferson kept a pet mockingbird that perched on his shoulder while he worked and occasionally stole bites of his dinner rolls. Jefferson never treated meals as mere fuel. During his diplomatic years in Paris, he studied French cuisine with the same intensity he once reserved for Locke and Montesquieu. Back in Virginia, he set his breakfast table with coffee strong enough to impress Europeans, warm wheat muffins soaked in honey, and, if the garden had been generous, a plate of figs or strawberries. He believed vegetables should dominate the plate, so midday diners often found bowls of stewed tomatoes, black-eyed peas, and okra, flavored with garden herbs. Suppers skewed cosmopolitan. Imported Parmesan stirred into a baked macaroni casserole, wine from his own French-stocked cellar, and ice cream packed in saltpeter-cooled molds even during a Virginia July. He loved wine so much that friends joked his cellar looked like a small embassy. White Hermitage for poultry, Niersteiner for fish, and bottles of Chateau Margaux reserved for reflective evenings on the portico. He tracked every vintage in ledgers that survive today, proving that the third president operated the first serious American wine spreadsheet. Meet the household. Jefferson's public life flashed across continents, but his private world centered on family. He married Martha Wales Skelton in 1772. She died just 10 years later after bearing 6 children, only 2 of whom, Martha and Mary, reached adulthood. He promised never to remarry, and he kept that promise, though his complicated relationship with Sally Hemings, an enslaved woman and Martha's half-sister by their common father, produced at least 6 more children. Historians confirmed the connection by DNA in 1998, a revelation that underlined the paradoxes of a man who wrote that all men are created equal, yet spent his life entangled in slavery. Jefferson's daughter Martha, nicknamed Patsy, effectively became mistress of Monticello after her mother's death, steering household logistics with impressive poise. His younger daughter, Mary, known as Maria or Polly, brought Parisian manners to the Virginia hills. Grandchildren scampered through corridors, dodging busts of Homer and Cicero, while Jefferson grinned from his drafting board and reminded them to keep their French lessons sharp. A tour of Monticello, Little Mountain, with grand ambitions. Before the presidency, Jefferson poured energy and money into Monticello, the neoclassical mansion he had been tinkering with since his student days. He sited the house on an 868-foot hill so breezes could chase Virginia humidity from the halls. Visitor after visitor described it as half laboratory, half art gallery. A clock in the entrance hall displayed both time and day of the week on rotating cylinders. Skylights brightened interior alcoves decades before skylights became architectural fashion. Dumbwaiters tucked inside wall cavities delivered wine bottles directly from the cellar to the dining room. A 7-day great clock dropped cannonball weights down the wall. Weekdays painted on the plaster marked their descent, so Jefferson never missed an appointment or harvest chore. On the surrounding 5,000 acres, enslaved laborers cultivated tobacco early on, then switched to wheat when soil exhaustion set in. Jefferson experimented with crops from around the world: upland rice from Africa, sesame for oil pressing, and the now famous tomate he first tasted in France. On paper, Jefferson looked prosperous. Translate his peak holdings, land, crops, and an estimated 600 bottles of wine into today's dollars, and you find a figure around $30 million. But debts haunted him. Years of import bills, generous hospitality, and the economic crash following the War of 1812 drove him deeper into arrears until, by his death, creditors saw Monticello less as a mountaintop palace than a collateral safety deposit box. A lifetime of lavish curiosity had outpaced the dividends of even the finest Virginia soil. Jefferson typically rose at first light, plunged feet into cold water for tonic bracing, and wrote letters while sipping café au lait. He measured the outside temperature with one of America's first Fahrenheit thermometers, then logged barometric pressure and the wind direction, data that later guided farmers across the region. Music filled gaps in paperwork. The amateur violinist once practiced 3 hours a day and claimed that music gave him more delight than any single sense. If he craved mechanical puzzles, he turned to his portable copying device called the polygraph, which penned a second copy of every letter through synchronized arms, a technological marvel long before carbon paper. Afternoons might find him riding through the estate, notebook in pocket, sketching a new plow design. Evenings ended with a walk along terraced gardens, where he noted germination rates of imported cabbage seeds. And because humor likes contradictions, Jefferson invited dinner guests to debate Enlightenment philosophy, then insisted they spin a dumbfounded riddle before dessert. Scholars still puzzle over one riddle whose punchline he apparently failed to write down. Achievements on the national stage. Jefferson's resume could have filled the entire rotunda of the Library of Congress. 1. The Declaration of Independence, 1776. He drafted its soaring preamble in 5 days, condensing Enlightenment philosophy into 1,337 words that inspired revolutions from Haiti to Hungary. 2. Virginia's Statute for Religious Freedom, 1786. He guided its passage, guaranteeing that faith remained a personal choice, not a state mandate. 3. Louisiana Purchase, 1803. He authorized $15 million to buy territory from Napoleon, doubling America's landmass for about 3 cents an acre. 4. Lewis and Clark Expedition, 1804 through 1806. He commissioned the Corps of Discovery to map the new land, cataloging hundreds of species and opening trade routes. 5. Embargo Act, 1807, a bold attempt to keep the U.S. neutral during European wars. It hurt American merchants and remains his least loved experiment. 6. Founding the University of Virginia, 1819. Post-presidency, he designed the campus, curriculum, and even faculty hiring guidelines, calling the project the last act of useful service I may render my country. While in office, he maintained a public frugality, cutting the federal debt by 1/3, yet shelled out personal funds for secret scientific missions. His contradiction meter rarely slept. Life after the presidency. When Jefferson stepped down in 1809, he returned to Monticello, eager to transform it into a living academy. Guests poured in, farmers seeking seeds, students craving advice, foreign dignitaries chasing gossip about Napoleon. He hosted them all, gliding around the dinner table on a swivel chair of his own design, pouring claret with gusto, and quizzing everyone on the latest discoveries in geology or botany. Correspondence never slowed. He exchanged over 400 letters with John Adams alone, the two old rivals arguing everything from ancient history to the nutritional merits of boiled vegetables. Jefferson also devoted countless hours to redesign the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. The lawn flanked by pavilions, the domed rotunda patterned after the Roman Pantheon, lecture rooms without religious symbolism, a secular temple to knowledge. Debt, however, gnawed. Wheat prices fell. Wine imports remained stubbornly expensive. By 1825, he petitioned the Virginia legislature to let him raffle Monticello in a public lottery to settle accounts, a plan that stalled in committee. Even his famed library, sold to the federal government in 1815 after the British burned Washington, no longer shielded him from creditors. Final days and a historic farewell. By mid-1826, Jefferson's health faltered. He alternated between weakness and bursts of philosophical dictation, the worst pain striking when he learned creditors might soon seize household furniture. Yet he remained serenely focused on July 4th, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration. That morning, struggling for breath, he whispered to attendants, "No doctor, nothing more." His last recorded words were, Is it the 4th? Reassured that it was indeed Independence Day, he slipped into a coma and died shortly after noon. His death coincided almost unbelievably with John Adams' demise that same afternoon in Massachusetts. Newspapers called the twin departures a final seal of heaven upon the American experiment. The country mourned. European editors paused their ridicule long enough to admit this timing might qualify as destiny. What historians said afterward. Jefferson's passing triggered immediate debate. Admirers hailed him as the mind of the Revolution, the man who expanded America in a single treaty, the philosopher-architect who sketched universities the way others sketched barns. Critics pointed to the contradiction of liberty proclaimed while slavery persisted at Monticello. Yet even detractors acknowledged his restless energy, an intellect that leapt from language to language, gadget to gadget, recipe to recipe. One seldom noted detail emerged decades later. Jefferson once built a rotating bookstand that held 5 open volumes at eye level, allowing him to consult multiple languages simultaneously while drafting legislation. The gadget disappeared into attic dust until a curator uncovered it in 1899, still oiled and functional. It symbolized Jefferson neatly, always reading ahead, always juggling ideas, always inventing tools for a broader perspective. Legacy in a nutshell. Ask a schoolchild, and Jefferson likely meant the Declaration. Ask a surveyor, and he meant the Louisiana Purchase. Ask a college architect, and he meant the University of Virginia's lawn. Wine lovers toast him as America's first true enophile. Food historians credit him with popularizing ice cream and macaroni. Gardeners cherish his farm book, packed with yield charts and seed swap notes that foreshadowed modern extension services. Yet visitors to Monticello often remember smaller impressions. Sunlight slanting through an oculus onto a polygraph machine. The quiet tick of the entrance hall clock. The scent of heirloom roses transplanted from Paris. And a sense that the house itself breathed curiosity, even as debt hammered at the door. Closing invitation. The next time you swirl a glass of vintage red or twirl a forkful of pasta, send a nod to the tall Virginian who believed the pursuit of happiness included the pursuit of flavor, knowledge, and bold real estate deals. Then open 2 books at once, just to honor a man who rarely settled for 1 page at a time.